I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump wouldn't like my face either. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, the nation marks the 14th anniversary of the September 11th, 2001 attacks on New York and Washington. Democrats block a vote in the Senate on disapproving President Obama's deal with Iran. A group affiliated with the Milwaukee Bucks buys 10 acres of downtown real estate for $1. That's $1. And the Green Bay Packers get set to open their regular season in Chicago against the Bears. But we start with some presidential politics. His poll numbers lagging and his campaign needing a restart. Governor Scott Walker went to Ronald Reagan's alma mater last week in Eureka, Illinois. Walker pledged to wreak havoc on Washington and began laying out what he would do on day one of his presidency, including ending the practice of deducting union dues from the paychecks of federal employees, similar to what he did here with Act 10.
I'm going to stop the government from taking money out of the paychecks of federal employees for political union dues, because I don't think any worker in this country should be required to put money into a political fund that doesn't support candidates that they don't support. Why should you have to have money from your paycheck go to support somebody that you fundamentally oppose out there? That's wrong.
But on the campaign trail, it continued to be all Trump all the time, with the Donald making fun of the appearance of the lone Republican female in the race, Carly Fiorina, and taking shots at Surgeon Ben Carson. But he continues to lead in the polls. Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, former state representative Michelle Litchens, defense attorney Dan Adams, and political consultant Mary Jo Boss. We can talk about Walker's problems in Iowa in just a moment, but okay, the Donald Trump thing. How long is the Donald Trump bubble going to last, or is it not a bubble?
Oh, it's definitely a bubble. Right now, everybody says they're a likely voter, but how many are going to actually vote is going to be a lot smaller. But really, Donald Trump, if you look at it as like the Bachelorette, he's the crazy guy on the show who's never going to get the ring, but you want him to get him a rose because you just want to see what he's going to do next. Okay, but is he doing damage to the conservative Republican brand? I don't think within the party he is, because he's not considered part of the party, I think, by the real party. To the Democrats, I think people will move on quickly to who's the real candidate, and he'll be forgotten.
He does seem remarkably Teflon, that no matter what he says, no matter who he insults, he mocks women, he mocks Megyn Kelly, he mocks Carly Fiorina. He tries to denigrate the experience of Ben Carson, who actually is a world-known brain surgeon, and yet every time he makes fun of POWs, he pretends that he has more military experience than veterans because he went to a prep school. And yet every time he says something like this, his numbers go up. Why, Michael Holt?
Because he's the flavor of the month. He's funny. He speaks off the cuff. He says a lot of dumb things that we expect from politicians. And I think all of this carries over. I was interested from Mary Jo when you said the real candidate. Who is the real candidate?
Well, yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. What do you think? Is it a bubble? Will it last?
I want to believe it's a bubble. The media continues to stick the microphone in front of Trump's face because they know he's going to say something obnoxious, something rude, and something stupid, which is why they're not shutting him out. You know?
Okay, but 32% of your fellow Republican voters are backing the guy.
Again, I agree with Mary Jo on that. I think a lot of those people who say that they're a primary voter, they're really not going to turn out and vote for him.
I hate to tell you all this, that he's not a bubble. He's here to stay. The premise of a bubble is that it pops. And usually in politics, it's you say something dumb, you have a gaffe, and then you're done, which we've seen to actually other GOP candidates. They have a different set of rules. Evidently, if you're a standard politician versus a celebrity candidate like Trump, he said the most outrageous things, as you've pointed out, and his bubble will not pop. He will go to the convention with 20% of the vote.
Well, but part of the problem, of course, is that he is sucking all of the oxygen and the attention away from the other candidates, including Scott Walker. You know, Scott Walker has gone from first in Iowa to 10th place in Iowa. Last poll showed him at 3% in Iowa. Is that because of things that have happened to Scott Walker, or is it because of Trump?
It's the entire dynamic. You know, you have somebody like Scott Walker who had to be perfect to get the nomination. He has had gaffe after gaffe, and he's not the safe candidate that everyone thought he would be.
He's also not getting all of the attention now because it is all going to Trump. Well, these things are going to change when the advertising starts coming out, when the candidates start spending their money, and the voters are reminded of who's really running for office out there and what they stand for.
Well, but the reality is that he, almost all the attention that Scott Walker's been getting lately has been negative. I mean, I can't keep track of all the articles that are writing an obituary. How much of that has been self-inflicted? Those problems, Mary Jo Boss?
I think very few of them. I think there are growing pains, but he went out to Eureka. He was strong. He regained his confidence in who he is as a base candidate. But I think one thing to remember is even though his poll numbers have gone down, his favorability numbers have stayed up.
This is by the way, that I disagree with you. That I do think a lot of it was, in fact, self-inflicted, and I think he was being too clever by half. I think he was trying to move to the right of everybody. I think he took positions that he felt uncomfortable with because he didn't really have them. I think he said some things that were, that were mistakes that he did not correct. So there were a lot of those things were self-inflicted. But you do point out something interesting about the polls. That even though he has dropped down, he's got a, what is it, 62% approval rating in Iowa, which still means that when you were asking the question, if and when the Donald Trump bubble bursts, when in fact the votes get cast, will he be an acceptable second choice?
And there's a concept in business that you have to pay attention to the customers that you already have, because you can't get those customers back if you lose them. He's lost 15% of the GOP primary electorate, people who had bought in and have now pulled back. Getting those people back is going to be tough.
It will be. I think the Donald Trump question, I think we're going to know a lot more in next week's show than this week, because I think this debate on Wednesday, and I am not a fan of debates. I don't usually watch debates. This one's going to be really, really, really dramatic. So what is your glass half full this week? What is your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, my glass is half full because Wisconsin gained 140,000 jobs from January 2011 to June 2014 at a growth rate of 5.1% over the same period. The national job growth rate was 8.4%. My glass is half empty because had Wisconsin kept up with the national growth rate, we would have seen an additional 90,000 jobs.
Michelle Litchens.
My glass is half full because there are very large oil reserves under the Arctic. It is half empty because Russia posted their flag there. Russia had 40,000 troops up for a military exercise in Siberia to celebrate the taking of Crimea. And Russia has 41 icebreakers, and the United States has 2.
Dan Adams.
Well, my glass is half full this week because a Republican Assembly member, Todd Novak, listened to medical researchers in Wisconsin's bioscience industry and voted against a bill banning research that uses fetal tissue. My glass is half empty because even with a rare moment of courage by a GOP Assembly member voting in favor of science and against the right to life lobby, the bill still passed through committee, bringing it one step closer to law.
Mary Jo Boss.
My glass is half full because the extravagant generosity of philanthropist John and Tasha Mortridge inspired others to do likewise and raised over $250 million for the UW. My glass is half empty because those funds could have changed so many lives if they were used to lower tuition for kids who can't afford college instead of raising salaries for already well-paid faculty.
Well, my glass is half full because last Friday the nation stopped to remember the victims and the heroes of September 11th. It's half empty because we just made a deal that will empower the world's foremost sponsor of terror, Iran. Next on Sunday Insight, is Hillary Clinton's campaign in trouble? Hillary Clinton's visit to Milwaukee coincided with new polls showing the former First Lady falling behind Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders in both New Hampshire and in Iowa. Earlier in the week, she finally offered an apology for using a private email server as Secretary of State, but she continues to be dogged by questions about that private email server. Meanwhile, Vice President Joe Biden seems to be edging closer to a possible challenge. So are Democrats seriously looking at a plan B, do you think, Michael Holt?
No. Hillary.
Wrong, by the way.
No. I mean, who's going to run? Biden? I mean, give me a break. Bernie's not going anywhere. He has his title floating around that says socialist. And even though, I can agree with certain aspects of his platform, he's not going anywhere. Hillary is going to win the nomination. She's hitting issues that Democrats want to hear. She's talking about equal rights for women. She's talking about uplifting the poor. Those are Democratic Party issues.
Okay, Dan Adams, what do you think?
Well, you know, Hillary Clinton was in town this week, and the speech that she gave was kind of a throwback Democratic speech to 2011. It was kind of an anti-Act 10, you know, red meat to the left wing of the party, which I found a little boring, but I agree with Michael. There's no alternative at this point. I don't think Biden will get in, despite him doing better in Republican head-to-heads than Hillary.
Okay, well, obviously, you know, you have better Democratic sources than I do, but I'm telling you, Joe Biden certainly looks like a guy who's thinking of edging closer and closer. You know, the appearance on Labor Day when he's running on that rally, people saying, "Run, Joe, run," the kinds of things that he is saying. The appearance on the Stephen Colbert show, which I thought was very, very powerful, very emotional. And, you know, there's a couple of things going on with that Hillary campaign. Not only is she falling behind in the primary states to Bernie Sanders, I think the real panic is coming when you start to see that she's running behind Jeb Bush and Ben Carson, and even with Donald Trump. If she loses that aura of inevitability and electability, I think you're going to have a plan B.
Not only that, she's losing women in the most recent polls. The women are no longer wanting to vote for her, and that was the reason why everyone was supposed to support Hillary in the beginning, because we wanted the first woman president out there.
Okay, these guys don't think Joe Biden's going to get in. What is your sense, Mary Jo Boss?
I don't think anybody's going to get in but Hillary, and the problem is the rank and file sees this as coming down from the DNC, from the Nationals, and they say this is the coronation. You know, this is, other people have said, you know, this is what will be.
Which is
and that is making them resentful in addition to not liking her.
I think you're missing one of the key wild cards. Number one, the blessing by President Obama, Barack Obama, you know, blessing a Biden candidacy. Remember, Joe Biden has wanted to be president for decades. He's this close to being president.
Decades. I mean, that's the key.
Well,
decades.
I'm going to tell you that if there are more polls showing Hillary Clinton imploding, the pressure on Biden is going to be great. And trust me, if every governor and every senator wakes up in the morning and look in the mirror and they think that there could be Mr. President looking in the mirror, if you're the Vice President of the United States, of course you think you can run for president. Okay, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. We'll hand out some unsolicited advice, and Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, it's good for, What I don't get is how State Representative Martin Voss felt he could do an end around the state open records law a few months after the public outcry over similar efforts to dismantle the law. Question is, what do lawmakers have to hide from people who put them in office?
Michelle.
To the teachers in Seattle who are striking because they want a 10.5% increase instead of the 9% raise they were offered, remember, Wisconsin, times have changed, and it won't end well for you if you continue to strike.
Dan Adams.
Agree with Michelle. High school seniors, there are 87,000 jobs that need to be filled in Wisconsin right now, and because of a new program at MATC, next year you will be able to train for needed job skills for free. No tuition costs. Check it out.
Mary Jo Boss.
My advice is to the liberal media tripping over themselves in a rush to write the obituary to Scott Walker's presidential campaign. There's a long way to go before Election Day, and Scott Walker has made a career out of embarrassing people who underestimate him.
Well, my unsolicited advice is for my Democrat friends here. You do need a plan B, and you're welcome. Next on Sunday Insight, new admission rules at a popular suburban festival, an overreaction or just a sign of the times? Our summer of festivals is winding down, of course, but the controversies continue. At this week's Tosa Fest, a new rule. Organizers put up a fence around the party and required anybody under the age of 18 to be accompanied by a parent after 3 p.m. A local liberal columnist called that an overreaction. Officials said it was just a sign of the times. Your take, Michael Holt?
I'm still wavering over whether or not it's paranoia or racism. We're talking about Wauwatosa. Remember Wauwatosa was going to build that big gateway on 60th and North? I guess it was going to check people's IDs if you're black going into the city. You know, I can understand some people's fears, but they have had one incident, 2 teenagers, black teenagers fighting. And the chief of police said it was about nothing but kids being kids. So what is this fear that they're going to be invaded by black thugs?
I don't think it's racist at all. I think this is, like the police officer said, it's a sign of the times. Perception is reality. And if you feel somehow that there might be violence there and the city is worried about people going to the festival.
But based on what?
Just their perception, what they heard about happening last year, and it was probably, over...
So if 2 white kids get into a fight last year, they would still put up his fence.
Two white kids who show up without their parents under the age of 18 won't be allowed in, right? Is there a racist? What do you think?
I think it's a shame. I think it's a sign of the times, and I don't think Wauwatosa is making the decision based strictly on what has happened in Wauwatosa. They're looking at the larger community around them and even the nation. But I think the problem is that people are no longer willing to step in. I mean, if you see a couple kids fighting, it used to be two adults would grab them, knock their heads together, and tell them to get out. People won't do that anymore.
Yeah, because you'd be crazy if you stepped in and tried to do something like that.
Well, I was a 16-year-old once, and I was a jerk, so I probably needed some adult supervision. I think Tosa...
You're putting this in the past tense.
Yeah. My parents will appreciate that. I think a little more adult supervision, having kids not be unattended, is fine. You'll remember in the beginning of the summer, there was a great fireworks festival downtown, which my wife, who was very pregnant at the time, and I went to. We were astounded by the diversity and the great crowd. There were people with headscarves, people speaking French, and then it was ruined by one knucklehead. One 15-year-old knucklehead who decided that they would go get a gun and murder another kid.
But that was way from the festival and the activities.
No. That was right in the middle of where everybody was hanging out.
Again, part of the reality is that large groups of teenagers are attracted to events like this. Large groups of teenagers have had an impact on festivals. There's a reason why Greek Fest is no longer out at the Orthodox Church and everything.
I was going to say that, but I was afraid to.
But it's highly unfortunate. I mean, there's no question about it. On the other hand, I do think it's a recognition of reality. And until this community gets, and I mean black and white community, until Milwaukee gets a handle on this cultural breakdown.
I don't know how that's going to happen. Let me tell you what's really, really going on. The Community Journal went to some big department stores in Wauwatosa, and they said they didn't want to advertise in the black media because by advertising, they would attract black kids. I mean, let's get serious about this. I mean, you can't block off the whole city.
Hey, nobody under the age of 50 reads newspapers anyway. What is it you don't get? Let's go around the table. That was good. Michael. Michael Holt.
What I don't get is the continuing fascination with Hillary Clinton's email scandal. She apologized. Let's move on.
Michelle.
Charlie, what I don't get is why Muslim refugees from Syria are being aren't being welcomed with open arms by their surrounding Muslim countries. Why do Muslims have to depend on the generosity of Christians?
Dan Adams.
I don't get why the GOP can't figure out immigration reform. Give those undocumented workers who are keeping Wisconsin the dairy state by working on our farms green cards, make them pay taxes, and use that tax revenue to seal the southern border.
Mary Jo.
What I don't get is why the Waukesha County Board pays a legal advisor when they don't always get to hear his advice. In this case, whether to loan $1.6 million to a private condo association that has let its buildings go down in disrepair.
Well, last week, Bobby Jindal described Donald Trump as a shallow, egotistical narcissist. What I don't get is why it took anyone so long to notice. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It is time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, my winner, Southside parents who support a new private school in their neighborhood. The city zoning board last week approved plans for a state-of-the-art school to be financed by Gus Hernandez. My loser this week is former Green Beret and avowed racist Glenn Miller, who was sentenced to death for killing 3 people outside a Jewish facility last year. Miller said he didn't want mercy, and the jury didn't offer him any.
Michelle.
My winner is Carly Fiorina, who will appear in the CNN Republican debate this week. It will be exciting to watch her answer all of the questions that my loser, Donald Trump, will fail to answer. Trump also made a comment about Carly Fiorina not being attractive enough to be president. Just a few more reasons why Donald Trump should never be president.
Dan Adams.
My winners are future college students. There is bipartisan consensus that the cost of college is outrageous. Republicans want to cut tuition. Democrats want to increase student aid. Both approaches are right, and I'm optimistic about the future. My loser, new Milwaukee County Board Chairman Theo Lipscomb, whose inaugural act was to allocate $150,000 to fund litigation against the county executive and state. That's right, taxpayer money wasted, a lot of it, so Lipscomb can have government sue itself.
Mary Jo Vaz.
My winners are Packer fans. The triumphant march to Super Bowl 50 starts today. My losers, of course, are the the Bears fans, who will have to suffer yet another year without a professional caliber football team.
Well, my loser, the John Doe prosecutors again. The state Supreme Court shut down their unconstitutional witch hunt, and on Friday, legislative leaders announced an agreement to overhaul the law. Winner? Well, how about individual rights? The John Doe involved pre-dawn raids and sweeping subpoenas to target individuals for the alleged crime of participating in the political system. Supreme Court's ruling and the new reform legislation means that's not likely to happen again. Thanks for joining us and joining me for my radio show Monday morning. It's on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.